I was standing at a podium in a rented-out barn in Waxhaw, North Carolina, holding a champagne flute and a wireless clicker, and 94 people in folding chairs were smiling at me because they thought I was about to give a toast. I was, just not the kind they expected. The groom, my former best friend, was sitting 8 feet to my left. My soon-to-be ex-wife was 4 seats behind him, in a lavender dress she bought with $389 from our joint checking account. I know the exact amount because I have the receipt. I have every receipt. That's sort of my whole thing. On the projection screen behind me was a title slide that read, "Derek and Kendra, a love story." Everybody thought it was a slideshow of cute photos. It was not a slideshow of cute photos. It was a color-coded spreadsheet with 47 line items, 14 hotel confirmations, GPS timestamps, and a Venmo trail that went back 19 months. The total at the bottom, bolded in red, read $47,312.18. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story doesn't start at a wedding in Waxhaw. It starts with a $387 charge at the Umstead Hotel and Spa on a random Tuesday in March, and a man who was too boring to notice. Except I'm not boring. I'm precise. And there's a difference that a lot of people learn too late. My name is Marcus Ellison. I'm 42 years old. I used to live in a 3-bedroom ranch in the Belmont neighborhood of Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm a forensic accountant at Harwell, Kepner and Associates, which is a mid-size firm that mostly does insurance fraud work and litigation support for divorce attorneys. The irony of that second part is not lost on me. Not even a little. Forensic accounting is one of those professions that makes people's eyes go foggy at dinner parties. You say, "I trace financial irregularities across complex transactional ecosystems," and people suddenly remember they need to refill their drink. My wife, Desiree, who goes by Daisy, used to introduce me to her friends by saying, "Marcus does numbers, like a lot of numbers. He literally reads bank statements for fun." Then she'd laugh, and everyone would laugh, and I'd smile and take another bite of whatever appetizer was closest. Because what was I supposed to say? She was right. I do read bank statements, and I do find them interesting. Transactions tell stories if you know how to listen, and most people don't know how to listen. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. My father drove a bread delivery truck for Flowers Foods for 31 years. My mother worked reception at a dental office on West Broad Street. We weren't poor, but we were the kind of family where my mom knew the price of milk at 4 different stores and would drive to the cheapest one. My older brother Terrence was the loud one, the athlete, the kid who got standing ovations at talent shows. I was the kid who sat in the back row with a calculator and timed how long each act was, because I wanted to see if the judges' scores correlated with performance length. They did, by the way, heavily. My grandfather, my dad's father, Pops, who raised chickens in Henrico County and could fix any engine built before 1990, used to watch me organize things. I'd line up his socket wrenches by size. I'd sort his mail by postmark date. I was maybe 9. One afternoon he sat me down on an overturned bucket in his garage, handed me a warm Dr. Pepper, and said something I've never forgotten. "Marcus, a quiet man with a good ledger will outlast a loud man with a good lawyer." I didn't understand it then. I thought he was talking about bookkeeping. He wasn't talking about bookkeeping. He was talking about patience, about the power of knowing things other people don't know you know, about waiting. That advice would become the single most important sentence of my adult life, and I didn't realize it until I was sitting in a parked Honda Accord outside the 21C Museum Hotel in Durham at 11:30 on a Wednesday night, eating a cold Bojangles biscuit and watching my wife walk out of the lobby with my college roommate's arm around her waist. But that comes later. There's something I should tell you about what I do for a living, because it's the reason this story ends the way it does. In forensic accounting, we don't just look at numbers. We look at the spaces between numbers. The transaction that's $1 under the reporting threshold. The expense report filed on a holiday. The wire transfer that goes to an account in Delaware that's technically owned by a shell company that's technically owned by someone's cousin. Normal accountants count money. I find where money hides. And money always hides somewhere. I mention this because one skill I developed over 16 years in this field, one mundane, boring, apparently exhausting skill that my wife mocked at every social gathering, is that I never delete anything. Not an email, not a screenshot, not a credit card notification. I have a filing system on my personal laptop with 11 years of financial records organized by month, category, and source. Desi called it my serial killer folder. She showed it to her friend group once, at a brunch I wasn't invited to, and they all laughed about it on a group text thread that she accidentally left open on her iPad. I saw the messages. I didn't say anything. I just noted it. That habit, the cataloging, the filing, the quiet compulsive need to keep everything, saved me, not metaphorically, literally, to the tune of $47,312.18. But I'm getting there. One more thing before I tell you about Desi. When I was 25, I had this dream of opening a small consultancy. Just me, maybe one associate, doing forensic work for small businesses that couldn't afford big firms. I even had a name picked out, Ellison Analytics. I drew a logo on a napkin at a Waffle House in Richmond at 2 a.m. after my CPA exam. I still have that napkin. It's in a drawer in my desk, under a stack of old tax returns. I put the dream on hold when I got married because Daisy said it was too risky, and we needed stability. She was right about the stability part. She was wrong about who would be the one to destroy it. And then I met Desiree Palmer, and for the first time in my adult life, I thought I'd found someone who didn't think my quietness was a deficit. I was wrong. I was catastrophically, expensively wrong. We met in 2016 at a friend's cookout in the Noda neighborhood of Charlotte. She was wearing a white sundress and holding a paper plate with nothing on it but a single deviled egg, and she was laughing at something someone said about property taxes. I remember thinking, that's a woman who laughs at property tax jokes. That's my person. She had this energy, warm, magnetic, the kind of person who remembers your name after meeting you once and asks about your dog by name the second time. She told me she was starting an Instagram brand around self-care and intentional living. I told her I investigated financial crimes. She said, so you're like a detective but with spreadsheets. And I said, that's the most accurate description anyone's ever given. And she laughed. And I was done. Finished. Gone. The first 2 years were good, not perfect. She spent more than I was comfortable with, and she had a habit of making plans without telling me. And her mother, Gail, had a way of looking at me like I was a beige wall she was forced to acknowledge. But the good parts were genuinely good. Desi would make these elaborate breakfast boards on Sunday mornings. Cut fruit, fancy cheese, those little crackers from Trader Joe's, and we'd eat on the back porch while the neighbors' wine chimes played. She left sticky notes in my briefcase that said things like, "Go get 'em, nerd," and "Come home to me." She remembered that I liked my coffee with exactly 2 sugars and 1 ice cube to cool it down, and she'd hand it to me every morning without being asked. I should have noticed the first crack. It was at a dinner party, at her coworker Tamsin's house in Ballantyne, maybe fall of 2018. Desi was telling a story about our vacation to Hilton Head, and she said, in front of 8 people, Marcus spent the whole trip on his laptop reconciling our credit card statements. We're at the beach, and this man is in the hotel room auditing our Visa bill like it owes him money. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But there was something in her voice, not affection, not gentle teasing, contempt, a thin, sharp blade of contempt dressed up as a joke. Looking back, the warnings were all there, lined up like items in a spreadsheet. I just kept reading the wrong column. The phone started going face down during meals around January 2022. Specific moment. We were eating pad thai from that place on Central Avenue. Thai taste, $34.17 for 2 entrees and a spring roll. And her phone buzzed, and she flipped it over so fast she knocked her water glass sideways. She said it was her mom. It wasn't her mom. I told myself it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. Then came the new password on her MacBook. Then the gym bag that started going with her to content shoots on Saturday mornings. Then the sudden interest in CrossFit, which she'd previously called, and I'm quoting directly, a cult for people who peaked in high school. She joined a box in South End called Iron Forge. The owner was a guy named Derek Whitfield, my college roommate from NC State, my best man. The man who stood next to me on October 12th, 2019, and gave a toast about how loyalty is the foundation of everything. And that's the night I checked her phone. Not her personal phone. She'd locked that down tighter than a federal database. Her old phone, the iPhone 11 she kept in the kitchen drawer as a backup. She hadn't wiped it, People never wiped the backup phone. It still had iMessage syncing. What I found made my hands go numb from the wrists down. Not hot, not cold, just absent. Like my body decided my hands didn't need to be part of this. There were 847 messages between Desi and Derek going back to September 2021. The early ones were friendly. Gym tips, workout schedules, an argument about whether sweet potatoes counted as a cheat meal. Normal, fine. But by November 2021, the tone shifted. Pet names appeared. Hey you became hey handsome. Workout selfies became shirtless mirror shots. And then, on December 3rd, 2021, a message from Derek that said, "Can't stop thinking about last night. You deserve someone who makes you feel alive, not someone who makes you feel like a line item on a spreadsheet." A line item on a spreadsheet, that's what he called me. That's what she let him call me. Desi's response, sent at 11:47 p.m. while I was asleep 6 feet away from her. I know, I just feel guilty sometimes. But then I come home and he's sitting there in his reading glasses, going through the Amex bill, and I think, this can't be it. This can't be my whole life. I read that message sitting on the toilet in our guest bathroom at 2 a.m. with the fan on so she wouldn't hear me breathing too hard, and something happened inside me that I can't describe as anger, because anger is hot and loud and temporary. This was cold. This was structural. This was the feeling of a building inspector looking at a crack in a foundation and understanding that the whole thing is coming down, not if, when. But I didn't confront her. A quiet man with a good ledger, I opened my laptop, created a new spreadsheet, and labeled the first tab Audit. Over the next 8 months, I became the most attentive, pleasant, invisible husband in Charlotte. I smiled more. I agreed to things faster. I stopped questioning her weekend plans. I stopped asking why she needed $600 for a brand photo shoot or $1,200 for a retreat in Asheville. I said yes to everything, and every time I said yes, I opened my spreadsheet and logged the date, the amount, the stated reason, and the actual reason. The actual reasons were not hard to find once you knew where to look, and I know where to look. That's the thing about being a forensic accountant married to someone who thinks you're too boring to be dangerous. She wasn't hiding from me. She was hiding from the version of me she'd invented in her head. The docile, obedient, spreadsheet-reading pushover who would never, in 1,000 years, think to cross-reference her, find my iPhone location with the GPS metadata on the photos she posted to her Instagram. Close friend's story. So I cross-referenced, and here's what I found. The girls' trip to Miami in April 2022, which cost $6,400 on our joint Amex. No girls. Just Derek. I confirmed this because Desi posted a photo of her hotel view from the Faena in Miami Beach, and the reflection in the window showed a pair of men's Nikes on the balcony railing, size 12. Derek wears a size 12. I know this because he left a pair at our house after a Super Bowl party, and I put them in the closet and noted the size because that's what I do. I note things. The content creator meetup in Raleigh that coincided with a $387 charge at the Umstead Hotel. I drove past the Umstead that night. Derek's black F-150 with the Iron Forge bumper sticker was in the parking lot. I took a photo with a timestamp. The Louis Vuitton pochette métis that Desi told me she won in a giveaway. $2,200. I found the order confirmation in her deleted emails. She'd used our joint account but changed the shipping address to Derek's gym. Bought with our money, shipped to his location. That one actually made me laugh. Just a short, bitter exhale in my home office at midnight, but it was a laugh. The audacity had a kind of artistry to it. By October 2022, my spreadsheet had 47 line items, totaling $47,312.18, 14 hotel stays, 2 fake girls' trips, a wardrobe of Lululemon and Alo yoga gear. Derek's gym sold Alo naturally. Restaurant charges, Uber rides to locations she was never supposed to be, a $780 couples massage at a spa in Blowing Rock that she told me was a wellness influencer event. I documented everything, every receipt, every screenshot, every GPS coordinate, every photo with metadata intact. I stored it on 3 separate encrypted drives and 1 cloud backup that Desi didn't know existed. My serial killer folder was earning its name. Now here's where people usually ask, Marcus, why didn't you just confront her? Why didn't you leave? And the answer is complicated, but the honest version is this. I wasn't ready. Not emotionally. Not financially. And not strategically, because somewhere in the middle of all that documentation, the cold structural feeling had evolved into something else. Not revenge, not yet, just clarity. The kind of clarity you get when you stop trying to save something and start trying to understand exactly how it broke. Also, and this is the part I'm not proud of. Actually, no, I'm extremely proud of it. I was waiting for something. I didn't know what. I just knew the spreadsheet wasn't done. There were more charges coming, more lies, more line items, and a forensic accountant never closes an audit early. Derek, meanwhile, kept coming to our house every Sunday for football season. Sat on my couch, drank my beer, specifically my Modelo, the 24-pack I bought from the Harris Teeter on East Boulevard. He'd slap me on the back and say, "Brother, you're the most solid dude I know." He hugged me, looked me in the eye, asked about my fantasy league. No. And then at 11:47 p.m., always around 11:47, that was their witching hour, he'd text my wife things I won't repeat. One Sunday in November, Derek was sitting at my kitchen island eating the chili I'd made, my grandmother's recipe, with the cumin and the dark chocolate, which I've never shared with anyone, and he said, mouth full, "Desi, you really lucked out with this one. Marcus is the total package, man. Loyal, hardworking, great cook." He pointed his spoon at me. "Don't ever let this one go, Desi." She smiled. That particular smile. The one that used to make me feel warm, and now made me feel like a prop in a play I didn't audition for. "Oh, I'm not going anywhere," she said. I refilled his bowl, because that's the kind of man I am. I refill the bowl. I note the time. I update the spreadsheet. The public humiliation happened at Desi's 31st birthday dinner in January 2023. She'd booked a table for 14 at Steak 48 in Charlotte, a restaurant where the cheapest steak is $62 and the sides are priced like they contain gold shavings. I was paying, obviously. I always paid. The total would come to $4,217.33 including tip, which I calculated in my head before the appetizers arrived, because I can't help myself. Halfway through dinner, Desi's friend Tamsin, the same Tamsin from the Hilton Head story, made a comment about how she wished her husband would loosen up with money. Desi jumped on it. "Oh my God, Marcus literally has a spreadsheet tracking every dollar I spend. I'm not even joking. He flagged a $12 charge at Starbucks last month because it was $2 more than my usual order." The table erupted. 14 people laughing. At me. At my spreadsheet. At the very thing that was, at that moment, compiling the evidence that would dismantle her entire life. I smiled and took a sip of my water. I don't drink at dinners where I'm being publicly dissected. And I said, "Guilty as charged. I do love a good spreadsheet." More laughter. Desi squeezed my arm. "Charged. See? He's a good sport. He knows I'm kidding." She wasn't kidding, and I wasn't being a good sport. I was cataloging. Always cataloging. Derek was at that dinner, by the way. Sat 3 seats down. Laughed the loudest. Made eye contact with Desi exactly 9 times. I counted. And excused himself to the restroom twice at the same intervals. Desi checked her phone. I noted the times in the Notes app on my phone, under a folder labeled Fantasy Football Draft Ideas. Then came the cruelest moment. February 2023. A Thursday, I remember because it was raining, that cold, gray Charlotte rain that feels personal. And I'd come home early from work because a deposition got canceled. Desi wasn't home. Her car was gone. But Derek's truck was parked around the corner on Shenandoah Avenue, which I only noticed because I'd learned to scan for it. Our neighbor, Mrs. Fenton, an 82-year-old woman who waters her azaleas every afternoon regardless of weather, waved at me from her porch and said, "Your friend was here earlier, the big fella. Desi let him in about an hour ago." They'd been in my house while I was at work, in my house where I keep my grandmother's chili recipe in a drawer and my grandfather's socket wrenches in the garage and the napkin with the Ellison Analytics logo in my desk. In my house, I sat in my car in the driveway for 40 minutes. The engine off. The rain hitting the windshield, and I felt something settle. Not rage, something quieter than rage, something that had been waiting for permission. I pulled out my phone and texted my colleague Vivian Park, a litigation support specialist at my firm who handles high-net-worth divorce cases. I typed 4 words, "I need your help." She responded in 11 seconds. Finally, I've been waiting for this text. That's the thing about being quiet. People watch you more than you think. Vivian had noticed changes in my demeanor for months. She never said anything because she respected my privacy, but she was ready. Here's what nobody knew. I'd actually found the first hotel charge, the Umstead, $387, back in March 2022, not October, not the previous month. March, which means by the time I was sitting in that car in the rain, I'd been building my case for 11 months. 11 months of smiling, of refilling Derek's bowl, of saying, "Sure, babe," when DC needed $900 for a brand collaboration trip. Of logging every lie in a spreadsheet that now ran to 14 tabs with cross-referenced formulas and pivot tables. My profession didn't just help me find the money. It helped me build something airtight. In forensic accounting, we construct what's called a funds tracing analysis, a document that tracks every dollar from source to destination, proving that marital assets were diverted for non-marital purposes. In divorce court, this document is a nuclear weapon. It establishes dissipation of marital assets, which in North Carolina means a judge can credit the wrong spouse for every penny the other one blew on an affair, every hotel, every flight, every $2,200 handbag shipped to a boyfriend's gym. I built the funds tracing analysis on my personal laptop over the course of 3 months. 47 line items, 14 hotel stays, 2 fake trips, 1 Louis Vuitton bag, every single charge sourced to our joint Amex, our joint checking account, or a Venmo account Desi didn't know I had access to. The total, $47,312.18. But the spreadsheet was only part of it. Remember my grandfather's advice? A quiet man with a good ledger will outlast a loud man with a good lawyer. I didn't just build a ledger, I built a timeline. I cross-referenced DC's location data from Find My iPhone, still shared on our family plan because she never thought to remove it, with Derek's Instagram check-ins. Derek was the kind of guy who checked in everywhere, the gym, the coffee shop, the restaurant. I had 23 instances where their locations overlapped at the same hotel, restaurant, or Airbnb within a 30-minute window. Each one time-stamped, screenshotted, and stored on encrypted drives. Vivian connected me with a divorce attorney named Odessa Meacham, a woman in her late 50s who wore reading glasses on a chain and spoke in the calm, measured tone of someone who has seen every possible configuration of human betrayal and is no longer surprised by any of it. Odessa reviewed my documentation and said, and I'll never forget this, "Mr. Ellison, in 27 years of family law, I have never seen a client walk in with a more complete evidentiary package. Most people bring me suspicions. You brought me a prosecution." I filed for divorce on March 1st, 2023, but I didn't serve the papers right away, because something happened in February that changed the entire trajectory of this story. Derek proposed to someone. Not Desi. A woman named Kendra Hollis, 29, a dental hygienist he'd been dating publicly for 4 months. See, that was the part I hadn't known. Derek wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was simultaneously dating Kendra, a perfectly kind, perfectly unsuspecting woman who thought she'd found a loyal, devoted CrossFit gym owner who loved her. Daisy was the side piece, or Kendra was, or they both were. The geometry of Derek's dishonesty was genuinely impressive in its complexity. The engagement happened on Valentine's Day, 2023. Derek posted a photo on Instagram, him on one knee at a rooftop restaurant in Asheville, Kendra crying, the ring catching the light. The caption read, "She said yes, when you know, you know." It got 342 likes. Desi texted me that night, casual as anything. "Did you see Derek got engaged? So happy for him." I was in bed, reading the message, with my spreadsheet open on my laptop beside me. The tab labeled Audit was glowing. "That's great," I typed back. "We should send a gift." What I didn't tell her was that I'd already decided how this would end. The wedding was set for September 16th, 2023, at a renovated barn venue in Waxhaw, about 30 minutes south of Charlotte. Derek, in a move of breathtaking audacity, invited me. Of course he did. He called me, voice warm and fraternal, and said, "Brother, I need you there. You and Desi both. You guys are family." Family. The man was sleeping with my wife and calling me family. There's a kind of evil so casual, it almost wraps around to being funny. Almost. I said yes. I said I'd be honored. And then I asked, with the tone of a man who means absolutely nothing by it, "Hey, any chance I could say a few words? Maybe give a little toast? You were my best man. Feels right to return the favor." Derek practically choked with emotion. "Brother, that would mean the world to me." I hung up and opened a new tab in my spreadsheet. I labeled it Toast. Over the next 6 months, I built 2 things simultaneously. The first was my divorce case, which Odessa Meacham was assembling with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. We had the funds tracing analysis, the location data, the messages from the backup iPhone, the metadata from Instagram photos, and a 14-page timeline of the affair that read like a crime novel. North Carolina is not a no-fault divorce state. Marital misconduct matters. Dissipation of assets matters. And $47,312.18 matters a lot. The second thing I built was a presentation. Not a speech. A presentation, 11 slides. The first slide, Derek and Kendra, a love story. The second slide, a photo of Derek and Desi at the Umstead Hotel, pulled from Desi's cloud backup, timestamp December 2021. The third slide, the Amex statement showing the $387 charge. And so on. 14 hotel stays. 2 fake girls trips. GPS coordinates. Venmo transactions. The Louis Vuitton receipt shipped to Iron Forge CrossFit. And the final slide, the one that would play in a room full of Derek's family, Kendra's family, their friends, their co-workers, and the caterer who was serving $38 per plate herb-crusted salmon. The final slide was a screenshot of Derek's text to Desi from December 2021. "You deserve someone who makes you feel alive, not someone who makes you feel like a line item on a spreadsheet." Beneath it, in 72-point font, total cost of affair funded by Marcus Ellison's marital assets, $47,312.18. I practiced the toast 14 times. In my car, in the parking lot of my office, during lunch breaks, eating turkey sandwiches. I packed myself in a reusable container because I've always packed my lunch. I timed it, 11 minutes. Every slide had a transition. Every word was deliberate. Was it petty? Absolutely. Was it proportionate? Debatable. Was it going to be the most satisfying 11 minutes of my life? I'd already done the math. The answer was yes. The day of the wedding was September 16th, 2023. Clear sky, 78 degrees. The kind of early fall Carolina weather that feels like an apology for August. The barn in Waxhaw was done up with string lights and mason jars and burlap table runners. The aesthetic Desi would have called rustic chic if she'd been the bride instead of the secret mistress sitting in row 7 with her legs crossed and a champagne flute she'd already refilled twice. I arrived in my 2019 Honda Accord. Khaki suit, light blue tie, flash drive in my breast pocket. I'd already coordinated with the venue's AV tech, a 22-year-old named Orlando, who was studying film at UNCC and was more than happy to help set up a surprise slideshow for the groom when I slipped him $200 and a story about wanting to show old college photos. Orlando plugged in my laptop, tested the projector, gave me a thumbs up. "This is gonna be so wholesome, man," he said. "You have no idea," I said. The ceremony was fine, beautiful even. Kendra looked radiant. She had no idea what was coming, and that part, That part gave me a pang of guilt I hadn't anticipated. She was innocent in this, completely, but Odessa Meacham had already helped me prepare a separate, private package of evidence for Kendra, sealed in an envelope in my car, in case the presentation didn't happen, or I lost my nerve. Kendra was going to learn the truth, one way or another. The only question was the delivery method. I chose the method that would also cost Derek his dignity, because he took mine. At every Sunday football game, at every dinner party, at every backslap and brother and bowl of my grandmother's chili. He took my dignity with a smile, and I wanted it back with interest. The reception started at 6 p.m. Dinner was served at 7. Herb-crusted salmon, roasted fingerling potatoes, a kale salad that cost more per leaf than my first car cost per year. I ate slowly. Desi was 2 tables away, on her phone, probably texting someone. Maybe Derek, maybe her next victim. I didn't care anymore. At 7:45, the best man, a guy named Colt from Derek's CrossFit crew, neck like a fire hydrant, gave his toast. It was generic. Something about iron sharpens iron and finding your person. Then the maid of honor. Then the father of the bride, who cried. Then the DJ said, and now a special toast from a lifelong friend of the groom, Marcus Ellison. 94 people clapped. Derek beamed. He pointed at me from the head table and mouthed, "Let's go, brother." I walked to the podium, set down my champagne flute, picked up the wireless clicker Orlando had left for me. The projector hummed to life behind me. "Derek," I said. "Kendra, thank you for letting me be part of your day." Derek and I go back to NC State. Freshman year, Morrison Hall, room 214. He was the guy who had protein powder on every surface, and I was the guy who organized the communal fridge by expiration date. We were an odd pair. Light laughter, comfortable, warm. Derek was my best man. Light stood right next to me when I married Desiree in 2019. Gave a toast about loyalty. Said it was the foundation of everything. I paused. Let the words sit. I want to talk about loyalty tonight, because I think it matters, and I think the people in this room deserve to know what it looks like. I clicked to the second slide. The photo of Derek and DC at the Umstead Hotel appeared on the screen, 10 feet tall and 6 feet wide. Derek in a hotel bathrobe. Desi in a tank top, leaning into him. Time stamped, December 14th, 2021. The room went quiet. Not the polite quiet of people waiting for the next slide. The airless quiet of people trying to understand what they're looking at. This is Derek with my wife Desiree, at the Umstead Hotel and Spa in Cary, North Carolina. December 2021. 14 months before he proposed to you, Kendra. Kendra's face. I'll carry it with me forever. The confusion first, the furrowed brow, the half-smile still lingering from the previous toast, the brain trying to reconcile the image with the narrative. Then the understanding, then the color draining from her cheeks, like someone had pulled a plug. I clicked to the third slide. The Amex statement. The $387 charge. This is the credit card charge for that visit, from a joint account I share with my wife. There are 13 more. I moved through the slides. Methodically. Calmly. The way I present findings in a deposition, every slide had a photo, a receipt, a timestamp, or a location pin. The Miami trip. $6,400, no girls present. Derek's Nikes reflected in the hotel window. The Savannah trip, $3,100. Derek's truck, GPS, tagged 2 miles from the Airbnb. The Louis Vuitton bag, $2,200. Order confirmation, shipping address listed as Iron Forge CrossFit, 1847 South Boulevard, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28203. Nobody was eating. The herb-crusted salmon was getting cold across 12 tables. I could hear Derek's mother making a sound that was halfway between a gasp and a word she couldn't finish. Derek stood up. His chair scraped the hardwood floor. His face had gone from tan to a color I'd describe as clinical. Marcus, stop. What are you? This isn't, brother, this is my wedding day. I know, I said. I was at the last one too. I clicked to the final slide. Derek's text message. You deserve someone who makes you feel alive, not someone who makes you feel like a line item on a spreadsheet. And beneath it, in red, $47,312.18. That's the total amount of money from my marriage that funded your affair with my wife, I said. I've calculated interest at 4.7%, which brings the adjusted total to $49,838.41. I'll take a check. Silence. 94 people. Silent. The string lights buzzed. A mason jar centerpiece somewhere tipped over, and nobody picked it up. I set the clicker down on the podium. Picked up my champagne flute. Took one sip. Congratulations to the happy couple, I said. Then I walked out. 7 words. That's all I said at the end. 7 words and a sip of champagne that cost Derek his wedding, his reputation, and, as I'd learned in the following weeks, a significant amount more. The immediate aftermath was chaos, which I only know secondhand because I was already in my Honda Accord, pulling out of the gravel parking lot and heading north on 16 toward Charlotte. Orlando, the AV tech, texted me 20 minutes later. Bro, the bride is in the bathroom. The groom is outside yelling, someone's mom fainted. That was not wholesome. I sent him a prayer hands emoji, which is the most emotion I've expressed digitally in my adult life. What happened inside that barn after I left, according to 3 separate sources. Kendra locked herself in the bridal suite with her maid of honor and her mother. Derek followed, banging on the door, alternating between, "It's not what it looks like," and "He's lying, babe, he's crazy." 2 statements that are hard to maintain when the evidence is still glowing on a 10-foot projection screen behind you. Kendra's father, a retired Marine named Hank Hollis, walked up to Derek, said nothing, and removed his boutonniere from Derek's lapel. Just unpinned it and walked away. According to witnesses, that was the moment Derek started crying. Desi left the reception 15 minutes after I did. She called me 11 times. I didn't answer. She texted, "You had no right to do that." Then, 20 minutes later, "Marcus, please talk to me." Then, an hour after that, "I'm coming home." I wasn't home. I was at a Hampton Inn. Off I-85 with a bag I'd packed 3 days earlier, eating a vending machine Kit Kat and watching a rerun of Forensic Files, which felt thematically appropriate. Desi found the divorce papers on the kitchen counter. I'd had Odessa Meacham's office deliver them by courier at 6:30 p.m., time to arrive while we were both at the wedding. Next to the papers was a printed copy of the funds tracing analysis, all 47 line items, with a sticky note on top that said, "I read bank statements like novels. This one's a bestseller." Within 2 weeks, Derek and Kendra's wedding was annulled. Kendra's family demanded the return of every gift. Her father, Hank, called Derek's gym landlord. They were in the same Rotary Club. And suddenly, Iron Forge's lease renewal became complicated. Within a month, Derek lost 3 corporate training contracts when word spread through Charlotte's insufferably connected fitness community that he'd been sleeping with his best friend's wife during the engagement. Within 2 months, a local blog, one of those Charlotte gossip sites that pretends to be journalism, ran a story headlined, "South End Gym Owner's Wedding Toast Goes Viral for the Wrong Reasons." Someone at the reception had filmed parts of my presentation on their phone. It had 47,000 views. Desi's self-care brand, which had already lost $14,000 of our money over 2 years, collapsed entirely. Her 8,200 Instagram followers became a liability when commenters started posting the spreadsheet screenshots under every photo. She deactivated her account in October. Gail, Desi's mother, called me once to tell me I was cruel and vindictive and didn't deserve her daughter. I said, "You might be right about the first 2, Gail. Have a good evening." And I hung up. The divorce was finalized in January 2024. Odessa Meacham presented the funds tracing analysis to the judge, who credited me the full $47,312.18 in equitable distribution. Desi's attorney tried to argue that the wedding toast constituted intentional infliction of emotional distress, but the judge, a woman named Honorable Patricia Yoon, who wore a look on her face that suggested she'd seen this exact movie before and was rooting for the accountant, dismissed the claim and noted in her ruling that the respondent's dissipation of marital assets was extensive, documented, and uncontested. I got the house. I got the Honda Accord, which I was going to get anyway because nobody fights over a 2019 Accord. And I got my dignity back, which doesn't have a line item but is worth more than anything in that spreadsheet. Derek reached out once, a text in November 2023, 2 months after the wedding. It said, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm sorry. For everything." I read it. I considered my response for about 45 seconds, which is long for me. I usually compose texts in under 10 seconds. Then I typed, "Per my records, you still owe me $49,838.41 adjusted. Venmo works." He never responded. Daisy reached out in March 2024, a full year after I filed. She called from a number I didn't recognize. I picked up because I thought it was a client. Her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it, not the Desi who commanded dinner tables and mock spreadsheets and made 14 people laugh at my expense over $62 steaks. Just a person, diminished, sitting somewhere I couldn't see. "Marcus, I know I can't undo what I did. But I want you to know, you were never boring. I was just too small to see what you were." I let the silence sit for 5 seconds. Then I said, "I appreciate you saying that, Desi. I hope you find what you're looking for." And I meant it. Not because I'd forgiven her. That's a process I'm still somewhere in the middle of. But because holding on to the anger was starting to feel like another entry in a spreadsheet I no longer wanted to maintain. Some audits have to end. It's June 2024 as I'm telling you this. I'm sitting on the back porch of the house in Belmont, drinking coffee with 2 sugars and 1 ice cube to cool it down. The neighbor's wine chimes are playing. Mrs. Fenton is watering her azaleas. I filed the paperwork for Ellison Analytics, LLC, last month. My consultancy, the dream I drew on a napkin at a Waffle House in Richmond at 2 a.m. when I was 25 years old. I have 2 clients already. Small businesses, the kind that can't afford big firms, exactly what I always wanted. The napkin is pinned to the corkboard above my desk now. The logo looks terrible. My handwriting has always been bad, but it's mine, and it's real, and nobody mocked it at a dinner party. Pops died in 2020, before any of this happened. Pancreatic cancer, quick and merciless, the way he would have wanted if he'd had a choice. But his voice is still in my head, every morning, clear as that warm Dr. Pepper in the garage on a summer afternoon in Henrico County. A quiet man with a good ledger will outlast a loud man with a good lawyer. He was right. He was always right, and the ledger is closed.